where we have more resources, we have more land, where we could have a higher quality of life, and we can actually have ownership of ourselves, because we also know outside of the country, there's a lot of racism. If we leave Africa and we come to other continents, we're going to suffer racism as well. And still, we feel that we have a better opportunity coming all the way here, because whatever conditions are in our continents or whatever leadership that we face there, we feel that we cannot build a better future for ourselves. So I think also the role here that when it comes to, as we talk about government and corruption, is that we really suffer in terms of leadership, because our governments could be leaders not only in terms of what they do for us, but what they keep us from doing.
Hello and welcome to the show. Our today's topic is about exploring modern day slavery in post-COVID-19 era and what should Africa worry about. Africa has been a source of supply for the victims of human trafficking and modern slavery. People leaving their countries because of economic issues, going to look for jobs, to have a better life, and so on. And that was before this pandemic. Now, during this pandemic, a lot of people have lost jobs. Businesses have closed. So there is a high risk that many people are actually becoming vulnerable, and human traffickers might have access to many people than they did in the past. We are here to discuss how we can protect and prevent this from happening. Our two guest speakers here today are Dr. Wale Adeboye, who is the founder of West Africa Responsibility to Protect Coalition, and he is based in Nigeria. And we have Mr. Teddy Kaberuka, who is a co-founder of M4 Progress International, based in Rwanda. We have Yemisi Jonsken, who works for the Home Office here in the UK, and she's originally from Nigeria. We have Mr. Kabera Teresfor, who leads an organization called Hope Iwachu, and he's based in Rwanda. We have Mr. Caesar Gwitunga, who is a teacher in the United States and originally from Mozambique. We have Heather Both, who is an activist and a researcher on modern slavery, and she is based here in the UK and originally from Zimbabwe. We have Mr. Noel Thomas, who is the regional coordinator for Unseen Uganda, and he is based in Uganda. We have Alice Kalala, an activist based in the UK and originally from Democratic Republic of Congo. We have Mr. Everett Mugarura, who is the founder of Africa Youth Leadership Development and Health Initiative, also based in Uganda. And my name is Wanyirigira Emelta. I'm your host today. Thank you once again for joining us. So, and we are going to proceed with our discussion.
Yeah, I can tell you economic issues, economically, the families affected, and also the closure of schools. Has it affected our young girls? So it has, the environment is not so friendly, and therefore it increases the risk of the traffickers to take chance, because you can see family, children, young boys, girls being at home. They are so much pushed to be in a vulnerable state. And therefore, as activists, we look at it as a risk factor, because any trafficker can use that chance to, manipulate them. Also, another factor is also an increased access to technology that on one side, it is good to to engage ourselves in technology, but also the increased rate has also other signs. These girls are much closer or more having more access to the technology and social media. So we see that one as another factor for traffickers to use. They are engaged, on Facebook, on WhatsApp, at that age, so much excited to use the technology. And we look at it as on both sides as a risk factor, and at the same time as an advantageous and response to COVID. So as an activist here, I still see a lot of gaps. We need to have much emphasis in empowering these adolescent girls so that they can measure the level of excitement in these technology tools, given the fact that we're in a situation where things are being tested. It's something that we need to push and engage parents as well, because these are the ones who are following up the girls that are always picked up in these crimes. So of course we have a good on the other side of the government. They're doing hard to put a lot of punishments, heavy punishments actually, to make sure whoever is guilty is punished. So we see in the response to COVID, we see gaps in prostitution. It's not this social distancing and making sure we stay at home, we don't move. So it becomes a little bit difficult to get evidence or to gather evidences in a situation like this. So that's what I can say around the work of human trafficking here in response to COVID. But there is still a lot we can do: awareness, engaging other partners. We have different civil society organizations on ground, and also come January, schools are opening in January, but the schools also have been helping because there are some systems that we set in schools, clubs, engaging young peers, same age in empowerment initiatives at school level. So we see come January, schools are opening, there are some kinds of innovations that we want to put in place.
Excellent, excellent. I love the fact that you actually mentioned the impact of social media on our young people. I have been talking to young people, even those from here in the UK and across the world, wherever I was able to reach. The issue here, there's a big worry because the human traffickers are exploiting, they're hiding behind the pandemic actually, and use social media to exploit young people using social media because, for some months it was really total lockdown and kids, so even our youth were busy on computers, on iPads and chatting, doing whatever, because that's what they had as something to really keep them busy. And there was a big risk. And I remember someone really mentioning that to be careful because our children might be exploited during this pandemic because all they have their computers and the traffickers actually hiding behind the computers. Yeah. Dr. Wale seems to be ready now. Am I right?
Yes, can you hear me?
Right, great. So we're waiting for you to get ready. That's why we started with this. So Dr. Wale.
Okay, thank you. If you can all hear me now, I can proceed.
Yeah, cool. And so would you proceed by defining what is human trafficking? What is modern slavery? Because people can't differentiate the two.
Thank you so much for that. When we talk of modern slavery, we're talking about situation whereby people are being either sold for slavery, for drug purposes, or for other, inhuman activities. Basically, when you talk of modern day slavery, you are talking about exchange most of the time for money and for some other reasons. And when you talk about modern day slavery, you are talking about inequalities, whether within society or across different countries. So at the root of every element of modern day slavery, we have what we call inequality and inhumanity of man to man. So that is the simplest layman I can actually, to provide in terms of definition. But of course, there are different, technical definitions. I think as much as possible in this discussion, we'll just try to break it down and look at the significant impact that COVID-19 has had generally on modern day slavery and human trafficking, especially in Africa. And like I have from one or two people, depending on where you are, it depends, the category or the nature of human trafficking. But let me start by saying that COVID has obviously opened our eyes to the magnitude of disproportionate inequality that we face by many people, especially in poorer countries. And of course, can link that to Africa. You will notice that because of COVID, we now see a situation where people are being, for instance, let me give you a good example. Most countries in Africa, they adopted what we call strict, unprecedented measures to mitigate, the infection. But you also be aware that as much as that we are having that measures to mitigate infection, you are also having it reinforce existing issues that have to do with modern day slavery. So those who are already stuck in a particular environment do not even have opportunity to escape. And I'm sure you are aware that the measures that were enforced include enforced quarantine, curfew, lockdown, travel restrictions and disruptions, which of course obviously mitigated economic activities and public life. And we must not also forget for a moment, prior to the pandemic, one of the root causes of modern day slavery and human trafficking is societal inequalities, like I have mentioned. So what we have witnessed, or we are still witnessing present regarding COVID-19, is that it has exacerbated and brought to the forefront the systemic and deeply entrenched issues. Now, you see different countries in Africa and even beyond, especially a situation where factory workers were locked for days, either to beat government directives on movement or in a bid to meet high demand for essential health and survival items that needed to be produced. You know that many factories in China, they were locked down because of COVID-19. And what happened is that attention shifted away from those environments to factories who are already existing in Africa for increased production of medical masks, gloves, and all of that. Now, what we have is that we have workers who are involved in mass production of materials at odd hours, who obviously are not even entitled to additional allowances, who are not entitled to intensive benefits. So it is hard to now imagine the kind of terror that women in this environment who are trafficked and also being used for labor purposes face during the pandemic. Such discussion will mean that we need to elaborate, if time permits us. Secondly, I also need to particularly talk about some of the issues that this slavery and COVID-19 has brought to the fore. The first is that we have what I call increased vulnerability. You will notice that we already have, of course, elements of vulnerability existing prior to COVID-19. But when you look at the pre-existing vulnerability like poverty, poor economic and employment opportunity, lack of education, learning difficulty, disabilities, and mental health, all of these are now being increased and being reinforced because of COVID-19. Wherever you look at it from, whichever environment you look at it from, where you're talking from Lagos to Yaoundé, from Kampala to Cape Town, from Kano to Dar es Salaam, you will notice that the vulnerability of people in different parts of Africa has greatly increased. And such vulnerability now comes or they come in form of trauma, bereavement. Some of these, people have loved ones they cannot even access to. We talk about drug and alcohol addiction. We talk about homelessness and different precarious living conditions that people are presently facing. So what we see that traffickers who are now opportunists, they are targeting these vulnerable individuals. They are targeting vulnerable communities for recruitment with bogus promises of better life. And the second, thing that we'll talk about, where I make a pause to, why I get our reaction, is the issue of identification. For many of us who have worked or who are continuing to work across paths with human slavery dynamics in their different work settings, we will observe that identification of trafficking victim is one of the most difficult things to do, even under normal circumstances. Now, modern day slavery that thrives on both open and discrete exploitation of illegal and informal regulated sectors has shown us that particular sectors come to mind when it comes to use of identification. And that is where we are now having some of the challenges relating to COVID-19. COVID-19 made the capacity of organized crime perpetrators to hide their operations very, very well now. So even if victims were willing to report, the fear of losing their source of livelihood in the face of pandemic would deter them from doing that. COVID-19 is also meant that there is limited law enforcement capacity and capability to detect crimes, as most of them are aimed at enforcing lockdowns, adherence to health and public safety protocols. So overall, you will see that issue of identification and vulnerability are two key, issues that come to the front when we are talking COVID-19 and modern day slavery. And I want to stop here for a while.
Oh, thank you so much for such a great input. Indeed, this section is very hard because it is done in secret or in a hidden way that we can't even be able to identify clearly who is a victim, because the traffickers won't let us really know it. So it takes a lot of skills to be able to spot who is a trafficker, who is the potential victim of slavery. So yeah, I really understand where you're coming from. Yeah, anybody with a question to ask in regard to what Dr. Wale has just mentioned, please, or any comment? Can I see a hand, Alice?
Yeah, Alice, hi everyone. Yes, I agree actually with what Dr. has said, because in Africa, and in Africa we are all vulnerable. As long as you live in poverty, you are vulnerable. A person has no choice even if he's in the hand of the trafficker, because when he's even proposed to eat something, he's gonna go and do anything just to feed himself. But I think what you say about you don't know who is actually a victim is not actually a problem, because I think as long as you are in the bad situation, you are a victim of this kind of situation. Like COVID has taught us that in Africa, where people went on lockdown, family went without food, without work, and other people was obliged to work sorry, my children, sorry for the background, were forced actually to work. Or either you lose you lose your work, or you stay here for work. You don't see your family just for money. You understand? So I think it's the situation that we are in that putting us in that kind of situation as well, of being trafficked. So Africa is actually excuse me, Africa, I can't even concentrate properly. Sorry. Africa, actually, I think the government has a lot to do, because a lot to do when it comes to that, because everyone is a victim to traffic. If they don't provide for the population, people always gonna be looking for, to be trafficked. Sometimes people go for themselves, even if you know that the situation is bad for me. I don't know, but it's better to go than to stay where I am. You understand? So it's like you don't have choice. If I have no food, what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna be a victim for someone. You understand? So as long as there will be poverty in Africa, there always gonna be human trafficking. There always gonna be forced labors. Because people like taking advantage of others. Especially when you're in that position of vulnerability. So me as an activist, I think the first thing that I would like to do, me myself, is like to raise awareness to people to know that, listen, anything that you do, selling bread, whatever you do, just value it, because you don't want to sell or maybe lose your dignity just because of bread, because the government is not gonna just come to your how can I say it, to your rescue just like that, because COVID has shown us that we are on our own. You understand? We are on our own, and we should be taking responsibility, of sorry, I'm very, very not concentrated right now because my child, but that's the thing that I wanted to say. I don't know if you get something,
Thank you so much, Alice. Thank you for really highlighting on that. Taking responsibility is such an important thing. Yeah, because we can't risk. People who have been victims of human trafficking, I've met a couple of them, and one thing, like a lady I recently met, she didn't show any signs. She was well dressed, she had a smile on her face, and she was actually going through a lot. So you can't identify. But again, the fact that she left her country and found herself where she is, it was because she was expecting for something better. And luckily, she's alive. Many have died. There's organ harvest. Others are forced into, obviously, forced labor and prostitution and so on. So taking a responsibility, even if you don't have much, but you're safe wherever you are, I think would be a great thing. Again, my question goes to Dr. Wale. Who is the most at risk now in whatever you have read, or whether in Nigeria? Who do you think is at risk at this moment?
Critical. I didn't get your question.
I meant who is most at risk of human trafficking or modern slavery?
Yes, most at risk. I think what comes to mind immediately when you talk about most at risk for the unemployed, or those who have lost their means of livelihood. You see, COVID came with what I would call dramatic increase in unemployment, and it is all across countries. Where employment dwindles, what you have is that the corresponding reductions in income. And the environment of modern day slavery, as we all know, is mostly low wage and informal sector like. So what you see is that the significant number of people who are already vulnerable find themselves even in more precarious situations, in more precarious circumstances. So this a vulnerable population has now become even more exposed to the risk of severe exploitation as they try to identify means to secure their livelihood. Now, from garment industry to agriculture industry, farming, manufacturing, domestic worker, millions of people who are living in subsistence conditions, who have lost their wages, have become vulnerable. So it means that everybody around us, in those environments where we already have vulnerability, are now at greater risk. Beyond that, I think at risk people are also people I would call children, who themselves now, the risk of children being exploited has become very high, right? Because we now have most of predators, locked down around the home, or they are more at home or more around the community. So what you find is that with school closure, children are at higher risk of exploitation. You also have COVID that caused more children to be on the streets in looking for food and for income, for their family. So you see that this suggests that there is heightened risk of infection or exploitation for children. So this has, of course, made children to also be at high risk. when you also look at it, it's not about who is at risk, what is the nature of risks that are having in terms of COVID-19 and modern day slavery. You will see that there is what you call increased level of domestic violence. Domestic violence is also worrying in terms of modern day slavery, because even in COVID era, you still find it, being done day in out. And because most slave owners are now compelled to stay at home, if you like, if you permit me to use that word, or to work from home, the living conditions of many traffic victims, such as who are in domestic servitude or sex slaves, have become more terrible. So you can see that the nature of people at risk is getting wider and bigger. And it means that related to the domestic violence issue is that COVID-related restriction has also made the control of movement to reinforce the isolation of victims and to reduce drastically any chance of being identified or removed from such environment. In Nigeria, for instance, it took government many weeks, many months to evacuate some of these victims from Lebanon, for instance, in the past few months. Now, you can imagine how many who are in such environment do not have access to any means of evacuation survivor. So it means that the greater risk is for every of the category of victims that we have in terms of modern day slavery.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for highlighting that. Heather, you had something to say. Sorry, I had to cut you short because you were working on technical part of this. So you're free now to say something. Heather, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, no, Dr. Wale said a whole lot of things that I would have probably said and more, of course, at that point and at that question when you started. But if I would like to, like me to continue.
Just hit your mic. Yeah.
Yeah, if you'd like me to continue on who's most at risk, yeah, I would carry on with that because Dr. Wale touched on a whole lot prior to my wanting to say anything earlier. Can you hear me clearly now?
Noel, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. So as we were talking, I don't know if you've got a question for Dr. Wale or if you've got something to add on so that we proceed and they have Mr. Teddy also to speak.
It's not a question per se. I basically wanted to say thank you very much to Dr. Wale. He really brought it out very well. I come from East Africa. He comes from a different region in Africa, but you realize. Can you hear me very well?
Yeah.
Yeah, you realize that some of the causes or some of the causes of human trafficking or modern day slavery in sub-Saharan Africa are actually the same. You realize that most of the countries in Africa, we still have a problem. I should say it's over, tried and failed. The problem of underemployment or unemployment, and because of this, Martha, it's very bad because in the 15th century, our grandparents, grandparents were bought, forcibly and taken to, work as slaves. But today, in 2020, we actually sell ourselves into slavery. We actually pay money to go and work as slaves. Why? Because of the situation, because of the push factors in our economies. You've been to Uganda and you've read about a market in northeastern Uganda where mothers sell their children for £10 simply to get lunch. I mean, lunch for 3-5 days. That's unbelievable. So until our governments are able to respond to the issue of unemployment and underemployment, I think tackling human trafficking is going to be tricky. You know that in Uganda, for example, our universities graduate about 40,000 graduates every year, and the government can only provide jobs for 9,000 graduates. Leaving about 30,000 graduates without, jobs, and these graduates will be tempted to look for jobs, elsewhere. This can be done online, or they'll go to recruiting agencies, and they'll end up duped and end up in in prostitution or organ transplant unknowingly. So I think it's such a challenge, but also probably what I wanted to also share is it is going to be a challenge, because you see, if we battled and faced human trafficking before COVID-19, I am worried that post COVID-19 things are going to be worse, because you see, just as I said, the government can only provide jobs to 9,000 graduates, and all the other people, they actually look for jobs in informal sector. Now, most of the businesses have actually closed, at least here in the region. Uganda and Kenya, businesses have closed. You know very well that schools have closed. Throughout this year, you have so many teachers who do not have any earning. You have people who have been supplying those schools, they don't have any earning. And I can see that things are going to be worse and worse. And some of the girls won't go back to school even when we open schools in February after elections. So it is going to be challenging. That is why even now you can see that street connected children or street children are actually increasing on the streets. Why? Because, when schools were open, at least some of them would be kept in school. But now, I mean, they are on their own. They spend the whole day, playing, and as a result, they'll go to the street and try to, make ends meet. So it is a challenge, and I think it is going to continue to be a challenge. But also, talk about corruption in Africa. I know that we have a very good law, very good act, the PTIP in Uganda, and also the East African one. Very good, but you realize that either one, because of the people who are supposed to enforce these laws, one, some of them are not trained very well, and as a result, they do not do thorough investigations, and at the end of it all, cases are not fall to the latter, and you do not have, you have so many people who are arrested as suspects of human trafficking, but you have very few convictions at the end of it all. Why 90% is caused by corruption. People are paid money here and there to change investigations and to compromise investigations. That is basically what I wanted to say, Martha. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Oh, thank you, Noel. Thank you so much. This reminds me of those girls in Karamoja who are being sold even before the COVID hit. So I'm just wondering how they could be now. They're being sold by their own parents because they couldn't feed them. They couldn't afford to take them to school and so on. So that was before this pandemic. So now we are in the midst of it, and I'm just, it's very, horrible. Yeah, but definitely we can fight and win this war. Caesar, I can see your hand. Caesar Guitunga.
Yes, and
Yes.
I just want to say thank you, Dr. Wale, for your intervention and what you're talking about. I think the biggest thing for me here in this conversation is also like what I can learn, um, because I think that there's a lot that we can learn in collaborating with other countries within a continent, and especially other people in the diaspora. But I wanted to say that although like I'm a teacher now, and I have a master's in education. My background is also in health because I have a master's in health services administration, and there's quite a parallel between health and education, but also the problems that we're facing in the world right now. And one of the things is that sometimes we look at the symptoms of what's going on, and we have to address what the illness is, which I think Dr. Wale really touched on, which is the vulnerability of Africans. I think it's important to ask why we feel that we have to partake in self-enslavement. Why would I, for example, here in the United States, just the other day at the metro station, doctors from Africa are here and they're trying to get social security or looking for low-paying jobs because they feel that even with a doctorate in Africa, it's worth coming all the way to the United States, not have house security, not having health, not having even education or access to food, because for whatever reason, there's a belief that whatever money that they saved up in Africa, it's worth to invest flying all the way here and then enslaving themselves here as well. And so another thing that you can draw a parallel with is I think what happens in Africa right now is we are hard on ourselves because we recently become independent. We recently got our own ownership of our own countries. But I think that the biggest problem is our people don't have hope, because we are more willing to invest ourselves outside of our continent where we have more resources, we have more land, where we could have a higher quality of life, and we can actually have ownership of ourselves, because we also know outside of the country there's a lot of racism. If we leave Africa and we come to other continents, we're going to suffer racism as well. And still we feel that we have a better opportunity coming all the way here, because whatever conditions are in our continents or whatever leadership that we face there, we feel that we cannot build a better future for ourselves. So I think also the role here that when it comes to, as we talk about government and corruption, is that we really suffer in terms of leadership, because our governments could be leaders not only in terms of what they do for us, but what they keep us from doing. Because we know that we cannot centralize everything. One of the reasons why I think Heather was about to talk about migrating into cities, especially in capital cities around Africa, is that everything is centralized. If we empower people in order to develop in their own communities, because there's a lot of entrepreneurship in Africa, there's a lot of informal business in Africa. So if we use that to our advantage in terms of empowering people to develop communities in the best way that they can, the government steps back. I believe that would also provide a sense of hope, because the life is improving. But life is never improving, especially because when people are growing businesses or they're funding independence, government comes in and then takes that away from them. War, my country, for example, that's a great example. We were developing, we were growing. Civil war starts between the two governments because we find oil in the north. And now that it's easier to recruit people for domestic terrorism, and it's also easier to recruit people for human trafficking because they feel desperate and there's no hope in their own liberation.
Oh yeah, I can really imagine. I can really imagine. But then, how do we restore that hope? How do? Yeah, it's a hard question to ask, and maybe not easy to get an answer today. But definitely, we need hope. We need to. You said the government should prevent us from doing some things, including from being victims of human trafficking. There should be certain, values put in place and principles that really keep the citizens safe. I'm so happy some countries are really working hard towards that, and others are also in the process of doing it. So, but again, taking our own responsibilities as citizens is, I think, something that we need to consider doing. Dr. Wale, I can see your hand.
Thank you so much. The last two speakers have really spoken so well. pointing out especially the issue of impunity and in terms of also empowerment, what we need to do. But let me quickly also dwell a little bit more on the issue of impunity. You see, the climate of practical impunity for traffickers to operate has so much increased. This is a challenge that COVID has brought us in terms of increased climate for impunity. We observe that our workers, they are facing dangers, for instance, regarding investigating trafficking in persons, which has some words somehow become lower priority for law enforcement agencies. We also see a massive policing effort concentrated on COVID-19 related issues. So what you see is that we have proactive inspection of suspect sites and cases getting reduced. So you have also a shift in action of law enforcement agencies to COVID-19, which in turn will impact on the arrest, investigation, prosecution, even conviction of traffickers. Now, in Nigeria, for instance, the justice system has limited the services for so many months. By that action or by such actions, what is that you have witnessed reduced adjudication of cases and justice for victims. And of course, when you have such situations, the things that will happen is that evidences will be tampered with. So the chances of justice, even for those who are probably hoping, looking for justice, is limited. Also, if care is not taken, then the opportunity for cases to even be filed in court may be missed, especially in terms of what the law says. So we are seeing precarious situations and systemic issues that are also coming with COVID-19. And if I may also react to what the last speaker talked about, you know, when you see our people moving from Africa to other parts of the world, it's like the last kick of the us, who is willing to hold on to anything to survive, because they tell themselves, if I'm here, what am I, get to live on? So why not take that risk and see maybe that will be a better life and all of that. But like you said, what is most important and crucial in all of this is our leadership in Africa. And anytime I talk about leadership, I don't just want to talk about it as one-sided. There is all what you call followership. Like I always tell people, every follower deserves the kind of leadership they get, because when you are at us in Africa, you realize that we have become so much used to bad leadership that even when we have the opportunity to rationalize it. So for me, I think we need to begin to look at how we engage citizenship in terms of what they need to do as members of the society, not just in the area of modern day slavery now, but in the overall leadership. Because if the citizenship cannot provide the kind of leadership that is forward-looking and forthright, it means that all of this that we are talking about, we all just remain mixed up. There will not be systemic process through which they can be tackled. So for me, I think it is important for us to look at citizenship engagement in terms of modern slavery and what we need to tackle it. We should begin to talk a bottom-up approach rather than top-down approach.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Wale. Really taking responsibility again comes back, and it's very, very important. And it is both ways. We don't have to condemn the government always, because we have also to take responsibilities as responsible citizens. So let me have Ted, please. Ted, can you hear me, Ted?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, sure. So Ted is an economist, like I mentioned, so he's going to tell us about the economic perspective of this, with the situation now in Africa, and how, basically has so much to tell us about that.
Well, thank you so much for having me on the panel, and my greetings to all the participants from wherever they are coming from. Just to build on what the previous speakers has said, if you look at the economic situation of Africa, I don't think I would say what people call poverty would be the justification of human trafficking in its full sense. What when you read different publication, when you consult people who have been victims of human trafficking.
Yeah, I can hear you.
If you see those ones, at least if I can start from the youth, the number of youth. Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you, Ted. Go on.
Okay. Sorry, I saw a disconnection somewhere. Well, I was referring to the youth, the big number of all the immigrants. If you see different reports from the Europe,
Yeah.
who crosses via Libya and these Italy coasts, you see that the majority are youth. And when you talk to them, when you see the different publication done and the interviews done, everyone will say, I've invested more than 3,000 US dollars to pay for my trip. To be honest, if you take 3,000 US dollars in Africa and invest in a small business, you can all agree with me that you can survive.
I definitely agree. Ted, we've lost you.
In terms of social networks, in terms of social justice, in terms of hope. The people don't have hope. Even those with things will continue to be better, which, at some point people feel like, with the savings I already made, I better pay for my trip and be somewhere where I think I will be much more stable in the future. And I'm sure at the moment people cross the Atlantic and the Mediterranean water, when they are on the other side of the continent, I don't think they make much more money than what they were making before. But the difference is, first of all, there has been this historical portrayal of Europe and even America that people are better off. That's something very important to emphasize. But two, at least people feel like I can enjoy my rights, even if I don't have any single dollar in my pocket. But inshallah, tomorrow I'll have something. But in Africa, the situation will be the reverse. Even if you have 1,000 in your pocket, 1,000 US dollars, you are not sure if tomorrow you'll still have it because the governance system is bad. Maybe tomorrow you will meet a policeman, arrest you, and take your money away, or you will be charged against this or that. So that social instability, I would say, creates people panic. They are not sure about their future. Therefore, they don't feel comfortable to invest. My friend who is in the US, he mentioned the doctor he saw in the station, where someone can do even low-paying job, yet they are doctors. You can imagine how a doctor can go to clean streets in the US, and yet in Africa, I'm sure, even if they are not making billions of dollars, but they are making at least a living. They are respected in the community, and they are very useful to the society as doctors because African health system need them. But someone would sacrifice or would prefer to go in the America rather than staying in Africa. So it's something very critical, I would say, to the level of the citizen.
Thank you
on
so
the
much.
side, one more piece I've seen when you talk with the different agencies supporting people in immigration, can be a permanent immigration, can be for education. There is very weird situation where, well, I'm not relating it as human trafficking, but it's something people should wonder. Why all the African leaders, they would have their families in the Western world? You know, you can check all the presidents, check all the politicians. They either have their wives there, they have their children there. So if, you know, from a human perspective, if the leader doesn't trust the country they are leading and they are the one who have the leadership role in their hands, how do we want the small citizen to trust the country? So
Yeah,
it's a
that's a big
paradigm.
question, Ted. Sorry, I'm going to cut you short. That's a very big question, really. And like you mentioned, and I think COVID should have been an example for us to see that we've got to rely on what we have, and actually develop it. Because at this point, we are relying on our medical services, our medical systems in the country, because we can't travel. We have to use what we have. What if we use everything that we have and develop everything, the resources that we have? Maybe we shouldn't actually be going through this. We have Everett Mugarura. Mugarura joined us just now, and we have few minutes left. So I was wondering if Yemisi is still with us. Yemisi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Oh, yes. Yeah, Yemisi, I was wondering if you have something to add on before we close.
Yes, thank you, Emerta. Thank you, everyone, for this meeting. Modern slavery, human trafficking, and all the crime affecting us as a continent is something that I think we've gotten to the point now where others can't do it for us. We have to do it ourselves. I know we're trying, but I think we just need to do more. We need to begin to look inward and see how we can encourage people back home, because don't forget that this problem is rooted back home because of poverty. So what my advice would be, how can we, those of us in the diaspora, what can we come up with? Who can we partner with? Maybe start small, from little villages, from educating the young ones from primary school, what it is to know what your rights are. Not when some politicians come and start distributing bag of rice and everybody is shouting thank you, as if, you know, it's a big deal. No, we need education. And I know, yes, it's going to cost money, but we need to start looking at those organizations that have sympathy towards Africa. We're not going to begging. No, we're not. No, we're not. We're just saying that we want to start empowering our own people. Because yes, we have a lot of organizations going to Africa, but they're doing it in the wrong way. And don't forget that even the people they partner with at home, apologies to those of you that are at home. I know you're doing a fantastic job, but majority of these people are putting the money in their pockets. So once again, thank you, Emerta, for having me. Thank you to everyone. I just hope that following this, Emerta, you will have some sort of strategy that we can all come back to and look at who we can go to, approach for support, for help, for whatever it is. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Yemisi. Thank you. Everett, Everett, can you just greet people for 1 minute, and then I'll have Heather.
Oh, this is strange. Greetings to you all. I'm sorry, I thought I was in time to be part of this meeting, but I'm glad I am coming at the end. I am Everett Mugarura from Uganda, and I head an organization for youth where we have most of the vulnerable young people, of course, belong to the youth. And I'm sure I will do something, and I've already started doing something, trying to change the mindset of the young people to know that they can still make it at home without having to go abroad where they are exploited here and there.
Excellent, thank you. So it's a call for action. Call for action, we've got to do something to make sure that we are part of those people stopping human trafficking and modern slavery. And the fact that you have all joined here is because you care. So together we can make a difference, and together we can eradicate human trafficking. So I hope to see you next time. And by the way, Heather wants to leave UK to go to Africa. And she has chosen Rwanda because she wants to go there and make sure that there's no human trafficking and modern slavery. She has dedicated her career to eradicate human trafficking and modern slavery. So Heather is leaving Manchester to Kigali. Yeah. So yeah, big up.
Most welcome for her to Kigali. We will receive her.
Yeah. Yeah. So guys, I really want to thank you all for being part of this
Very well.
great
conversation. I'm all for you.
Yeah. So I hope to see you next time.